So today it's sort of a very humid early autumn day. We're technically still in summer at the moment, but it very much feels like autumn with all of the rain that has been going on. And of course, one of the best things to do in autumn time is plant your bulbs. Now, I'm not getting started on things like daffodils and tulips and all that yet. I will have a proper video on that soon enough. But right now, we are going to be planting our crocus and snowdrop lawn. So last year, I decided to make this section of my garden just purely a lawn, and it looks pretty rough at the moment because I've just scarified it and aerated the soil and such, so to help make it more healthy. But effectively, this is where we are going to have a lawn absolutely filled with crocuses and snowdrops next year. Now, I had a few last year and it looked incredible, so I'm really excited to do this, and we're going all out this time. We're going to have absolutely tons. So I wanted to show you exactly how I do this and give you an idea of what it's going to look like next year as well. By the way, I'm trying to hit 4,000 subscribers, so if you like gardening content and you want to be a part of our little community, I would absolutely love to have you here. Okay, so starting us off, of course, we have to have our bulbs. And I've gotten a lot here. I got pretty much all of these from Dobby's in the UK, just because they've got some decent deals on them. But we've got some orange crocuses. I've got 3 bags of those. You know, it's not a massive lawn area, so it's not like I can plant thousands, but we're talking probably like a few hundred here at least. And there are actually some already in here last year as well. So those will hopefully come through again too, and maybe have multiplied a bit. So that's kind of what I'm expecting. But yes, some orange ones, because I think that'll stand out really nicely. Then we've got lots of just simple snowdrops, the basic sort of woodland kind. They'll go nicely over here. And then lots of the typical early flowering mix, which are the usual colors you see, like the sort of whites, pinks, purples, and yellows. So definitely a good variety of crocuses here that we're going to be planting in our little lawn section, which I'm very excited about. I think this is such a great way to start off the year. They come up maybe February time, even late January sometimes, depending on the year. And they look amazing. They give you a really nice early pop of color when literally nothing else is in color. And they are beloved by the pollinators. They give the pollinators that early boost that they really need. So they're definitely essential. So I'm going to start off here in front of my birdhouse, which doesn't really move, so we can make a nice little display. I think I'm actually going to start off with the orange ones because you'll see them first then, and I feel like they'll look really nice. So that's what we're going to begin with, some orange ones, and I'm going to show you exactly how I plant these. Now, September is a really great time to start planting bulbs, as is sort of October time, because there's going to be hopefully a lot of rain, as there has been here in the United Kingdom recently. So the ground is wet and easy to sort of dig into. And also it gives them the right amount of time window to actually start growing and developing before spring. Some people make the mistake of planting these like almost just before spring is about to happen, and oftentimes they don't even flower at all that year because they haven't had enough time in the ground. So don't worry about things like frost and that. You might want to worry about tulips because they can get something called tulip fire, so you might want to do those later, but I'm going to talk more about that in my other bulb video that I've got planned. This is just going to be focusing on the crocuses and snowdrops, which you absolutely can plant in September, provided it's wet. And this is our special little tool that we're going to be using, which I absolutely love. So effectively what this is going to do, and it's quite hard to show with one hand, but I'm going to give you an idea anyways, is it's going to dig into the ground and go all the way sort of down, making a sort of hole, as you can see it doing. This is a very sort of slow process, but the ground being wet will help you. So you're going to keep going around and around to create yourself a hole. There we go. So we've got a big chunk of earth and a perfect hole. Now, a lot of people use this tool if they want to sort of, let's say you've got a dead patch of grass and you want to replace it, you can get a plug up from a healthy bit of grass and transplant it in. So don't worry about digging up your grass like this. It'll be fine. This is just going to go straight back in the ground. I mean, look how satisfying that is. It's like Minecraft or something like that. But now that we've got a hole, what we're going to do is gently put our crocus bulbs in, making sure they're facing up. This is the upside, the little pointy bit, and the bottom bit is the kind of oniony looking bit. I don't know how else to describe it. There, so we've got 3 of them in the ground now. 3 should be fine, that's a nice little clump. And then we're going to make sure that all of this plug goes back in, and we're just going to pat it down like that. Now, we also want to stamp on it a bit, just make sure it's extra secure. Don't stamp on your little bulbs. And there you go, you can barely tell that has gone in the ground. And now they will rest safely underground and grow. And yeah, the grass will recover eventually. It might look ugly for a bit, but it'll recover. Now, since we want big clumps in one area, we're going to do lots of little ones in one space. There we go, we've got a nice little sort of uneven pattern here. And with crocuses and snowdrops, I don't recommend that you do things like straight lines of them or boxes or whatever. Definitely do them quite randomly, do them in drifts, because you want them to look nice and natural. That is definitely going to be the best look for them in your garden. If they look way too orderly, they just lose all their charm, in my opinion. So I definitely think sort of doing them, you know, in nice big clumps, but still doing them in sort of random drifts is a lot better than having it be too organized. So that's all the crocuses in their holes. We managed to get perfectly 3 in each hole, which I'm really happy about. I think if you just plant 1 in each hole, you know, there's a good chance it might not even grow, and it just looks a bit silly on its own. Last year I had lots of them just on their own and they looked very odd. So having big sort of groups of them like this is definitely the way to go. I will say, not all of these are going to grow. There's a 0% chance that all of these will grow. A decent amount won't, a decent amount will. So plant as many as you can, just so that you've got a good chance to see as many of these as possible in spring, because you just don't know what will happen to these. You know, some of them might already be failures. The supermarkets obviously can't check this sort of thing perfectly. So I definitely recommend just planting a lot. Don't just do a bag of crocuses, you know. I mean, if you can only do that, then I think it's better than doing nothing, because they are beautiful for the early pollinators. But preferably, if you're able to, try and do as many as you can. And obviously, consider them an investment, because they'll come back each and every year, and they will multiply as well. You'll see these guys multiply and spread naturally, which will look really, really great. Now try and get as much of the soil and the plug in as possible, and then just pat it down with your foot like this. And honestly, with some of these, you can barely even tell. Like over there, you can barely tell. I will say, if you're doing this when the ground is really wet, which I do recommend, one problem you are going to have is your garden is going to look ugly for a bit. So what some people actually do is they get their little shovel, the half moon shovels, and they dig up a ton of earth at once, like a whole slice of grass, and then they sort of pat that down and put loads underneath. So you can do that as well. I prefer the plug method. I think it's just a bit easier and a bit neater, but it will look ugly for a bit. So maybe grab your little fork, and yes, I can't believe I'm not wearing gloves for this, but all of my gloves got ruined in the rain because I was an idiot and left them out. So get your little fork and just aerate the soil, poke some holes in it, you know, be careful, otherwise you might lift the plugs back up. But yeah, just aerate them. And trust me, at this time of the year, when the grass is growing as fast as it can here in the northern hemisphere, it won't take long for this to recover. You know, give it a few sunny days and this will recover, and it'll look like nothing was even there. I mean, if you've seen any videos from my channel before and you've looked at my lawn all year, you'd never be able to tell that last year I planted tons of crocuses under here. So yeah, whilst you might be a bit worried about how things look immediately, don't worry, it'll recover. Grass is very, very tough. Snowdrops are the exact same method as the crocuses. These are very tiny little bulbs, but they're incredibly similar to crocuses in many ways. They come up around the same sort of time. So yeah, I definitely recommend doing them as well in nice little patches around your garden. I very much have a sort of woodland border over here. You know, it's sort of in full shade, so it can look really, really nice with plenty of that. So now time for the snowdrops. I also want to mention you don't have to dig that deep if you want to plant these bulbs. These types of ones anyways, they can very much go close to the surface. As you can see, that's only a few inches. So yeah, it's not too much of a problem with these really little ones. They'll be fine. If you plant them too deep, they might not actually grow. So, you know, don't plant them like just on top of the ground like this, but definitely don't plant them like wee all the way down like you would say maybe an allium bulb or something that is going to get very tall. You definitely want to give them a chance to grow. So with snowdrops, it's the same idea. We're going to just do 3 of these in each hole. Now you could be even more generous than this if you wanted. You could do maybe 4, but I'm doing 3 because I've only got so many and I want to have them in lots of places in the garden. So I'm focusing on these smaller sort of drifts for this year, and then next year I'm hoping they will multiply naturally and we can see lots of them grow, because obviously bulbs can be expensive, they are an investment. So, you know, you don't want to have to spend tons and tons of money every year. You want to be able to let these things grow naturally throughout your garden and spread naturally. So that's definitely a good idea. Also with snowdrops, be careful, because there's another type of one, which I can't remember the exact name of now, but it's a lot bigger. I think it's called galanthus, and it's a lot bigger. It kind of looks like snowdrops, and it flowers later on in the year, like maybe sort of April time rather than the sort of early time that these ones do. It's a lot bigger and it tends to be a lot more invasive. So you still could plant it if you wanted to, if you have it under control, but sometimes they call it snowdrops in the supermarkets when it's not. Snowdrops are these really tiny little bulbs that look like crocus bulbs. Focus, there we go. They look like crocus bulbs and they're very, very small. So yeah, just make sure you get the right type of one. Don't let any supermarket trick you into what you're getting. Once again, same sort of trick. We're going to pat them down and then give the soil a little bit of aeration with our fork. But just do be careful, because sometimes when you're doing this, the plugs can actually come back up. So just make sure they are properly secure in the ground, like that one wasn't. There we go. And any excess soil, just sort of rake it over. That'll help the grass a bit. There we go. Like I said, these little patches don't look too nice when they're like this, but later on they will look really beautiful. Now here we're doing some in front of my table and chairs, and I wanted to mention a word that I've heard used a lot when people do this, which is called naturalizing. So you might have heard about naturalizing a snowdrop and crocus lawn, and effectively, my best understanding of that word is that we are going to be doing it in a very natural way by putting them into the grass, rather than just having them in flower beds and borders, which is great too. We're naturalizing them into the lawn so that it will grow and come up each and every year. And they'll sort of naturally come up amongst the grass without any sort of issues or anything like that. So it's just a really nice way of giving the pollinators as well some early sources of nectar, which they will definitely really appreciate. And it just looks so good because it is so natural looking. You know, sometimes you go into forests and you see all the snowdrops, and you see maybe not so much crocuses here in England, but you can see them sometimes. Sort of councils have planted them under trees and stuff. It all looks really nice. So that's exactly what we want to do here in the lawn. And I'm picking in front of my table and chairs because this is sort of further down the garden. All the others were down that end by the birdhouse. So I've decided to do some up here so that we can have some nice snowdrops up at this end of the garden as well, which I think will look really good. I do have to say, these little plugs that you get are so satisfying. I just love it so much. I love putting them in the ground. It really feels like you're playing a video game or something like that. It's just so nice. And patching them down, it's just so satisfying. Honestly, you've got to use this tool. It's so good. If whoever made this tool wants to sponsor me, which I don't think is anyone, because I'm pretty sure this tool was made like 100 years ago, please go ahead, because I love it. I could promote this all day. And again, it's fun to trample them down. You know, it's not often you get to trample things in the garden. And yes, I'm doing this in my Crocs. I've noticed a lot of people commenting about that. These are just some dodgy old Crocs. What else am I supposed to do gardening in? Sandals maybe? But I'm not going to do them in my nice shoes, that's for sure. Anyways, the main principle is done. The crocus is, well, not crocuses, snowdrops actually this time, have been naturalized in, and hopefully they'll grow next year. Now, just so you know, we do not need to water these or anything like that. We just leave them in the ground to settle, and they'll hopefully come up next spring. This is exactly what I did last September, and whilst not all of them came up, a good amount still did. And I'm attaching some pictures on screen right now of what it looked like. So as you can see, I had some really nice little clusters that, you know, just made spring feel so much more cheerful. Because at that time of the year, it's not even really spring, it's sort of still winter in February. At that time of the year, the garden is very, very miserable. Things haven't quite come up yet. All the plants are completely dead. And, you know, oftentimes it's very wet and the nights are very early. So to have these crocuses come up and naturalize themselves in the lawn, and the snowdrops too, it's just so good, honestly. It brings you so much joy, and you have to remember it's not just you that's getting the joy from them. It is also the critters that are around early and start to wake up. So I'm very, very excited for this crocus and snowdrop lawn to naturalize in next year. I will be doing a follow-up video on this in spring to sort of show you all what it looks like and, you know, give you a garden tour and stuff. But we have to wait now. We have to wait a good 6 months? No, not quite. 5 months. Five-ish months, roughly, until we can see these, which doesn't actually feel that bad, to be honest with you, when you consider the fact if you plant something in spring, you're going to be waiting that long. So yeah, garden still looks nice at the moment, so it's kind of hard to think about the dreary times we're going to be having, but you know, this is a great time to do it. September is the perfect time to start planting bulbs, and soon I do plan on doing a full video showing you me planting bulbs in the flower beds. Now this is actually going to be a lot more difficult because, as you can see, they're still filled to the brim. So I've kind of been waiting for the month of probably October, I would say, so that we can wait for some of this stuff to sort of die off a bit and I can cut back a few things. I'm not going to cut back everything because I like to leave winter interest and places for insects to hide and such. But I'm going to cut back a few things just so I can make some big clusters of bulbs. We're talking things like daffodils, alliums, maybe not tulips just yet. I might save that for the future. But, you know, any of these sort of bigger bulbs that we can get. And there are already some in these flower beds, which again, just like the crocus lawn, you would never be able to tell because they completely die off. Also, one more thing I do want to mention about crocuses, and I believe snowdrops, and to be fair, this does apply to most plants, but I want to specifically mention it for them. If you have cats or dogs, do not let them eat these. They are really, really poisonous, especially crocuses as far as I'm aware. They are really deadly poisonous to animals. So what I do is I don't let my cats out in the garden at all until I've done the first cut of the year and they're basically completely gone. So once I've done that first early cut and all the crocuses have sort of died off and they're gone, then, you know, my cats sort of come out into the garden with my supervision. But yeah, do be careful because they are poisonous to animals. It's not even just cats and dogs. I think if rabbits eat them, it can be bad for them. Yeah, do be careful with crocuses. They can be bad. But to be fair, I'm kind of preaching to the choir here because almost every plant is probably not that great for a lot of animals. A lot of them are poisonous, so that's just general advice. But I thought I had to mention it anyways. That's kind of how I get rid of my crocuses. I do an early cut once they've all died off, probably about like late March sort of time. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to subscribe and I'll catch you in the next one.